The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Does have a case of pneumonia. We know you all wish her the best and a speedy recovery so she can be back sitting in the seat. Coming up, we have Ask Dr. Doreen, your chance to interact with one of the world's foremost experts on autism and certainly autism behavior. And after that, we will have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, with yours truly alone, flying solo. Great guest, Doug Baker. I call everybody a doctor these days. But stay tuned, because coming up, we have Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen, your chance to ask Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet, the founder and president of CARD and also ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, your questions about your child and their behaviors and any concerns you might have. Welcome, Doreen.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm so happy to be back with you again this week.
I know, I am too. It's always lovely to do this with you, but I'm sad about Shannon, and I hope she gets better.
Well,
I'm glad. Thank you so much for doing this so she can rest.
Well, she needs to rest, and Shannon being a type A autism mom, it's often difficult for her to rest.
I know. It's so true.
You know, she wouldn't listen to me, but finally her doctor said, you must stay in bed this week.
Yeah.
So I know that all the viewers wish her a speedy recovery, and we all have to take time to rest sometimes, don't we, Doreen? Let's just talk about that for a second.
Yes, seriously. I mean, you know,
you had 4 hours sleep last night.
I had 4 hours sleep last night. Yeah. We just, you know, I guess we push ourselves so much, and we are in a field that it just feels like you can't afford to stop for a minute, because, you know, that's my life. I know in your life, you've had just so many things happening in this year and last year that you've had to kind of keep up.
Right. I mean, my husband passed away.
Yeah.
It'll be 2 months on the 25th, and I have to tell you, I haven't had time to grieve.
That's right.
You're not allowed, because you have so much paperwork and so many details
that
the grieving process is delayed, which is really unfortunate. But
it's unbelievable.
As you said, we tend to think we are indispensable, don't we?
Yeah, and of course, I mean, and you also have a child to deal with, and who has continuous needs, and we get into the habit, I think, you know, like this morning, the reason that I got up at 4 was because my daughter was leaving town, and I had to help get her there. But, you know, I could have probably worked something else out. And I'm sure that a lot of times it's the same might hold true of you as Shannon, for instance. We could work other things out, but we're not the people who ask for help.
No,
we're not the people who... for however we were raised, we're kind of the people who see ourselves as the last resort. Like, we can't really depend on anyone else because everybody depends on us. And I feel like a lot of moms, also moms who are listening to our show or viewing our show, probably are the same type of personality.
And dads too.
And dads, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the folks that, you know, we end up being the people who everybody else can depend on. And so it just becomes part of your persona to just keep going and keep going. And it's almost like you have to live up to a certain level that you start to believe in as well. And the guilt of just giving yourself a day off is ridiculous. I look at Shannon and really, having pneumonia, there is nothing other than rest. You have to rest.
Right. It forces you.
It
brings you
to.
to your knees. It brings you to the bed where you can't do anything.
Correct.
And I think there's a lesson in that, though, isn't it? That we really can't wait to get to that point, can we?
Oh my gosh, and I've done that a few times in my life. I've gotten better now, but I because I recognize the signs of when I'm going to completely crash.
What are some of those signs that moms should be looking out
Absolutely. This is very important, guys. Like, when you all know this in yourself. Like, I'm pushing myself too hard. I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping properly. And those are like
maybe drinking a little too much wine at night, or whatever you're eating, too much junk food, whatever your self-medication thing might be to
that's a very good point.
Stress.
So we all have different little things we do, right? Like you mentioned a few that are very important. Like if you really have it together, it's very interesting. If you actually sleep well, you will, as a result, then sleep well and enough. And we don't realize that you are enough. At some point, when we were maybe 30, you could get away with 6 hours of sleep. And now, as we start, those of us who start going into our 50s, you really do need a little bit more sleep. And when you sleep well, you also tend to take care of yourself better, right? So like when you don't sleep, I find with myself, when I don't have enough sleep, I don't exercise because I'm wiped out all day. And when you don't exercise, obviously it's a cycle. And then you also eat poorly because you're just trying to eat things that will give you energy at that moment. So you're not really eating healthy, you're just eating carbs. So it just becomes this horrible cycle. And you're right, Nancy, in that we end up doing things just to maintain momentary energy or momentary whatever it is, a sense of coping mechanisms, right? So overeating, shopping sometimes, just procrastinating, all those things. And honestly, if you sleep well, that's like the primary thing that helps you manage the rest of your life is just sleeping. Right.
Well, we could do a whole show on sleeping and getting our kids to sleep. This is an issue for me right now with Wyatt. Maybe we can touch on it later. But first of all, we need to do a disclaimer about the information today.
Of course, as we always say on this show, we receive a lot of information from parents and we try very hard to give answers. But of course, it would be an injustice to any family if we were to try to give very specific advice here. So a lot of what I will be saying in this show and answering these many questions that have come in are more in general terms, and we want to make sure that our viewers know that we're not giving you medical advice or psychological advice. We could never do that. We don't have enough information about your children, and please, in most of these cases, I will refer you to go see a professional nearby so that you can actually get more accurate responses that pertain specifically to your child. Having said that, we hope that some of the guidance that we provide here is helpful in general
and
to
let's
everyone.
remind everybody that Skills, www.skillsforautism.com, is available to everyone listening and is a wonderful tool for getting some more individual
content advice. Skills gives you a lot of direction if you're doing an ABA program. And IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, also on their website, you can get a lot of guidance.
What's the IBT website? Institute
for Behavioral Training, and it stands for, the website is www.ibehavioraltraining.com.
Okay.
And that website is where you can find a lot of guidance to deal with individual issues, like how do I deal with my child when they're having a tantrum? What do I do with these types of questions?
Let's get into some of these
Exactly.
right now.
A lot of these types of things.
Here's one that I so relate to this mother, because getting your teenage kids to do anything is a challenge, but particularly our kids on the spectrum. Hello, I've been working on getting my teenage daughter to wear a sports bra. She will only put it on over her t-shirt. What would be the next step to get her to wear it under her shirt? It may be a sensory issue. She doesn't like the feeling of it next to her skin. It's a loose-fitting soft bra. Thanks for your advice, Doreen.
Sure. So, I'm always, there's two ways to approach anything that you want a child to do. You can either increase reinforcers for the whole thing, or you can shape it. So, and you can do both, obviously. So if we're just to increase reinforcers, essentially, so what you would do is you would have the child wear the bra for a very short period of time, so let's say 5 minutes, and they would, for doing that, they would get a very significant reinforcer. And gradually you would turn the 5 minutes into 6 minutes, into 10 minutes, into 20, and each time you would be reinforcing, and you'd maintain the high level of reinforcer, you'd just be increasing the duration of time required to receive the reinforcer. That's kind of one way to do it. Another way to do it is to, perhaps you would start with a one of those sports outfits that have like a shirt that has a built-in bra.
Right.
And so you would wear that. It's more like a t-shirt, but it has a built-in bra. And as the individual gets used to that, then it'll become much easier for them to acclimate to a bra. Please make sure that if it is a sensory issue, you do have a very loose fitting, not wired bra, perhaps. There's lots of different choices these days.
She says it's a loose-fitting soft bra.
Yeah, and so then all you have to do is just gradually have the individual get used to it. You know, when
none of us want to wear bras in the beginning,
yes, you
right?
know, and when you're
I used to take
teenager,
mine off when I would
exactly.
get out of my parents' house and I'd get down the street. I'd take mine off. That was in the time where everybody was going braless. Today, there's enough violence in the world without seeing me braless. Okay.
That's hilarious. But if you think about any teenage girl, they're gonna have an issue with this.
Course.
It's not comfortable.
Unless
you get used to it.
unless they want to be like the other girls, and our
Right.
kids sometimes don't
Right.
have that kind of social, pressure on them to conform. Okay,
Absolutely.
so hopefully that is some good advice there. Hi, Nancy and Doreen. Thank you for all your great advice. My 15-year-old high-functioning son, is great in logical skills, but his word skills vary. Some simple vocabulary he doesn't get or take literally. He doesn't like to read. How can we help him? This creates a challenge academically and socially. He is not able to understand some conversations. Many thanks.
Okay. So, this is very important, and you've identified a few characteristics about your child that he's, for instance, very good with logical skills, and you call word skills, and you're saying his simple vocabulary isn't good. And you've also identified that this is leading him to having problems academically and also socially and in conversation. And you're right. A lot of times I find that when parents want their child to improve in conversation, the number one skill that is important that's lacking is vocabulary, which is an interesting thing. We never really think about it, but the truth is many of our kids have not age-adequate vocabulary, so that's an important thing. But I would like to suggest that perhaps there are other precursor or prerequisite skills that might be missing. And so that's a very important thing. Sometimes, most of the time, what I do is I will see children that are being treated by our supervisors at CARD. And the reason I see them is because they're not progressing for one reason or another, and I'm trying to help troubleshoot.
Yeah.
So, and what ends up happening is always, much of the time, is that some prerequisite skill is absent, and no matter how much we're trying to teach a particular skill, it's not catching on because that prerequisite isn't there. And I identify what the prerequisite is. So the best way to do this is for you to, knowing that you're a parent who understands how important these various things are, wouldn't you like to know all the different areas that your child is lacking and how those are prohibiting him from learning further? So my suggestion to you, strong suggestion, is you do 2 assessments. One assessment is the skills assessment, skills index. So I really recommend that you go on our skills website, which is right in front of Nancy, and it is
skillsforautism.com.
skillsforautism.com.
And you can also call 877-965-4559. 975-4559.
Yes, and we will help you with that. But if you just go on the skills website and you enroll for just a month, you do the index, which is the assessment tool that starts skills. Now, this is really important. I know your child's 15, it doesn't matter. Skills goes to a normal functioning 8-year-old, which if you're a normal functioning, typical functioning 8-year-old, you are pretty much, you've mastered most elements that have to do with things like conversation, vocabulary, etc., etc. You might have between 8 and 15, we develop more socially, not in core content so much, and academically, of course. So what I recommend is you finish that questionnaire, you answer all the questions, and you'll have, this week, we're loading up a new assessment on skills called the Short Index. It's a short version of the assessment. I recommend for this parent to do the long version. You'll have a choice. Please do the long version because the long version is much more detailed. It will take you a week to answer these questions, something like a total of 20 hours, maybe more. It's a lot of questions. But it will give you incredibly valuable information. What it'll do is it'll provide you a series of lessons that your child needs. So everything that you say your child cannot do, for instance, you're saying here he's not good with vocabulary. Well, we won't ask, does your child have appropriate vocabulary? We'll ask you about 30 questions about vocabulary. So it's very detailed. So we'll get a very, very clear picture of exactly what areas of vocabulary, what age level, what types of words, etc., as well as all other areas of functioning. And then you'll get each of those areas that your child is deficient on leads to and connects to a lesson or a series of lessons. And skills will show you all that. It'll show you every lesson that you need to work on. It'll tell you exactly how to work on those lessons. It's a very good tool, it really is. So, and anyone who starts using it knows how useful it is. So I would really recommend that you do that because it will help you figure out all the different things. And it'll help you figure out how to teach those things. Like I could tell you right now how to teach vocabulary. That is not on its own going to be sufficient to increase conversational skills. I've often said here, conversation has to do with a lot of different things. Vocabulary is one of them. Being able to enter a conversation, being able to exit appropriately, being able to pay attention to other people's body language and, you know, are they losing interest? Should I change the topic? Being able to turn take, being able to repair, people start walking away. How do I repair, get them back into the conversation? There's a million things that goes on in conversation. Contextual cues, cues having to do with the audience, the person or people you were talking to, a million things. So I think the best help would be if you spent a little bit of time on skills.
Okay, and I want to remind people that you can also, if you are a working parent and you feel you don't have the time for this, you can do it with a caregiver. You can bring in someone to learn this and work with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which we have done with Wyatt and gotten that person trained and part of the entire therapy program, which is great.
That's very, very important.
So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. We've got so many questions today. We'll be back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen.
Well, today is the One Hope Act Today for Military Families 10K and 5K Run, Walk, and Family Fun Festival.
Thanks for coming out to support this awesome cause.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more people involved, more people to be aware of autism as a disorder so that they can be more involved in this effort to help people find resources.
Pull that belly button in, get a nice balance there.
This is an incredible event. I'm very passionate about it. Autism is affecting so many kids across the United States, and I also support our military.
1, 2, 3, 4.
My name's Gunnery Sergeant Sean Tajma, working with the School of Infantry West. I'm currently running with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. I'm personally involved with this because my son Jacob has autism. I just want to say thanks to Act Today for what they're doing to help my family and other military families with autism.
Here we go, let's hear it for the 2nd Light Infantry.
Some of the main sponsors here, of course, One Hope Wine is the title sponsor.
What we do is we donate 50% of our profits back to different partner charities, one of them being Act Today that does a fantastic job.
Act Today is very dear to my heart because when my husband was deployed, they were there when we didn't know how we were going to make things happen. They give so much to the military family, and it comes at a time when you just don't know how you're going to make ends meet. So to me, it's more than just an event, and it's more than just a grant. It's a gift.
All right, you guys, have we gone over the rules?
Thank you all, to the teams, to the individuals that donated to this fantastic cause out here again this year. The event got larger.
People ask me why military families with autism. Why does Act Today have that as a special program? I'll tell you why. Because our military families should not have to fight two battles. One, to protect our country, and another, to get services for their children. They move so often. Every time they move, they have to start again. We owe it to them. And it just was a tremendous success. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking part in it.
Check this out, Marine. See all these wonderful people? All you gotta do next year, Marine, Devil Dog, 2 for 100, sign up with me, staff or an email, and I'm gonna take you out here, do a little 5K, little PT early in the morning. After that, you can have the time of your life. After that, I might even be able to get you a letter of appreciation, maybe a little libo time. How's that sound?
Sign up for next year, because this is an event that comes on and on. It's a win-win situation here.
Welcome back to Autism Live and Ask Dr. Doreen. I am subbing for my colleague and friend, Shannon Penrod, who is out with a little case of pneumonia, and we wish her the best, and she will be back, I'm sure, next week after she's had some rest. Dr. Doreen, we've got so many questions, but let's start with this one from Paramus, New Jersey.
Sure.
Hi guys, when is a card center going to open in New Jersey? Can you answer that?
And I wanted to say we already have opened in New Jersey in Paramus. So.
In Paramus, okay. She said she couldn't find a good ABA provider for her 5-year-old. 2 providers already were not good. He has tons of language, just still has issues with making and keeping conversation. Plus, he's not social with other people other than his 2 brothers, myself and his dad. Behavior not too bad. So, though I was going to be easy to find thought it was going to be easy to find good ABA, I was wrong. He's really smart. I feel that time is being wasted. He could be doing amazing if we had the right ABA provider. He's come a long way. At 2.5 years old, he was almost nonverbal. Now he asks for anything he needs, makes comments, and when it's something into like movie credits, he can make up a whole story about it. Help, please. Well, you already said you're open.
Yeah, we're open there, and this is, again, it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, Nancy, which is like a lot of times we expect our kids to jump from one level to another level, and a lot of times there's a lot of gaps which we don't realize. It's not the same when you can memorize 1,000 words. You're not going to become conversing with them. You're just conversational skills involve a lot more than just content, and we can definitely get him there. But the other question I have to ask, and this is pretty a sad topic, I always bring this up, or whenever I can I bring it up for our viewers, because I'm very passionate about the effectiveness of ABA, and I feel very torn about this because over and over and over we show that the hours of therapy are essential. The number of hours are essential, and yet when you look at, we have roughly 2,000 children in our current database, active children, and when you look at the average, and we're an organization, Nancy, as you know, where we passionately fight for our families to get more hours of funding.
Yes.
But when you look at our children, take a guess what the average number of hours per week is across all of our kids.
I'm going to guess across all of your kids 10 hours a week.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher. It's like 15.
Okay.
But I mean, it's really sad. It's just really sad.
And if those kids aren't getting ABA at school,
right,
And they're only getting,
Which really,
an afternoon,
right,
maybe 2 days a week.
Exactly.
It's not enough, right?
No, it definitely is not enough. And, even if it's 15, 17, 16 hours and it's like 3 hours every afternoon after school, it's just not enough. Like, we're talking about, and we've done millions of studies have been done about this, like, that 15 hours just isn't enough.
Right.
So I ask this parent, are you doing enough hours? Because we have these high expectations of our children, and we think that they're going to pick it up with just tutoring, 2 hours here, 4 hours there. This is not tutoring. This is a lot of skills they have to acquire in a very short period of time. And so it is essential that we give that amount to them, that those hours of high quality, good ABA.
Right.
And then, of course, yes, they will succeed.
Okay. So to this mom, you're open in New Jersey, get your kiddo in there and get your kiddo on a good program. Okay. Here's a question that could take the whole show, but you're going to give a quick answer. What is autism definition and its cause?
Yes, I'd love to talk about that. But before that, there's an email from someone who says, "Dear Nancy, you are amazing. Warmest thoughts and wishes to you and Wyatt. Thank you for all you do and for your generosity. Your uplifting energy and words have been so helpful."
Thank
you. And we don't want to skip that one.
All right.
Because
well, I
that's
wanted
just...
to say this is a great opportunity for me. I learn so much when I spend time with you. And to be able to help Shannon in any way, because it would take, I'd have to write a book to say all the things she has done for me during this time in my husband's illness, the help she's given me with Wyatt.
Truly.
If I can reciprocate a fraction of what that woman has done for me, then that makes me feel good. So moving on then, autism definition and its cause.
Right, so, we'll look at, and so I'll need a little bit of time on this and I'll try to be quick. So autism has changed in its form, and it has also changed diagnostically over the years. The current definition of autism is on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5. And what we're looking at now is a series of symptoms within two areas. The two areas that we consider to be reflective of autism, the first area is social deficits. Now, the difference with this definition of autism, the current DSM-5, and the prior definition, which was the DSM-4R, there are two main differences. One difference is that it became from three different types of behavioral symptoms that we look for. Now we're looking for two. In the past, we used to look for social deficits, language deficits, and the presence of what we call ritualistic, stereotypical behaviors, repetitive behaviors, self-stimulatory behaviors. Now it has turned into two, and the two are social deficits and the presence of those stereotypic repetitive behaviors. Why has the concept of language been dropped from the language deficit? Why has that been dropped from the symptoms required for autism? The reason is very simple. The reason is that the second difference, in the past, we used to have different types of autism. We would have autistic disorder, we would have PDD-NOS, we would have Asperger's, and we no longer have those. They're all now classified under the one big umbrella called autism spectrum disorders. Now, Asperger's was the highest form of autism in the past, and it was not accompanied by a language delay. So obviously, if Asperger's is now one of the ASDs, we can't any longer say that all ASDs have a language delay. However, we do say that all ASDs, all children who are diagnosed within the huge spectrum of autism spectrum disorders, will have a delay in social behavior, and there's many different forms of social behavior, and they will also have what we call stereotypic repetitive types of behaviors. Some children will also have a language delay, and that's a specifier. You can add that, so you can say ASD
delay
with
and
language delay.
and even regression. They might have language
Absolutely,
and then lose it. Okay.
absolutely. But as the specifiers go, there aren't many. So one specifier would just be language delay. So you would basically, the diagnosis would be ASD with language delay. You could also have a specifier which shows intellectual delay. So IQ is low. So you could say ASD with intellectual delay. So there's specifiers that go with these. And there's severity codes now. So in other words, you could say ASD needing significant support in social skills and support in repetitive behavior. So these severity scales are very good. I like the severity scales. It's 1 to 3, 3 being the child who needs the most level of support. Wyatt right now, for instance, just for you to know, would probably be a 1 or 2 on both of these areas because the level of support he needs is not as severe as some other children.
Right.
And that's how you diagnose it. That is really what the diagnostic manual tells us.
Okay.
Now, the question was, what is autism and what causes it? You know, I just kind of gave you the standard by book definition. What is autism to me is a little bit more than just the standard kind of definition of how you diagnose it. To me, and this gets into the cause, to me, the most important thing we can say about a disorder is what causes it. You know, I could say someone has a cold, and it's really, I'm giving zero information because, like, do they have a bacteria? Do they have a virus? And why is that important? The reason the cause is important is that the treatment relates to the cause. You know, if you have a viral infection, I might give you an antiviral. Right now, everybody gets the flu, and they get Tamiflu, which is an antiviral medication. Or you might have a bacterial infection like strep throat or something else, and then I'll give you an antibiotic. It's a completely different treatment. And I think that is very important when it comes to autism. While ABA is a treatment that works with autism, period, there's other aspects to autism that are very, very important for us to know. For instance, when we look at things like children are not sleeping, right? Well, the not being able to sleep is making it harder for these children to learn. So it's important to also treat the sleep issues, which kind of, they're not a direct cause, but they're definitely something that's contributing to the level of functioning.
Of course. When Wyatt goes to bed at midnight the next day, he's fussier, he has more meltdowns, and he's generally irritable.
Absolutely. Or if you look at children who have gastrointestinal issues, you know, those children are often in pain, and we're not doing anything about it. We're just kind of behaviorally, I always, as a behaviorist, I can make these statements and say it's so important to look at all the peripheral things that are involved as well and make those better. Now, from my perspective, just to kind of summarize how I think autism develops, I think what happens with autism, first of all, we know there's a genetic predisposition. There's a lot of families who have more than one child with autism. We've already discovered there's at least 5, 6 genes that are common. We know that there's going to be up to 25, 30 genetic components that form sort of the ASD chart. But right now, there's only a few, a handful have been identified. But there is a genetic predisposition. Now, what is this genetic predisposition? If you have the genes that you can actually sort of come up with some of these symptoms, I believe that the first place that it interacts with the human person, with the individual, is in the redox cycle. It's in the ability to detoxify. The genetic component, I believe...
Is that also known as methylation?
Methylation is part of the redox cycle. And methylation, of course, has to do with how we methylate and how we detoxify as well. And all of the various things that have to do with detoxification, I think, play a very, very important role in the development of autism.
So then environment plays a role, because if our kids can't detoxify and they're getting toxins in their system. And is that, Dr. Graham-Pichet, why you feel there is an epidemic? Because we do have such an explosion of toxins in the environment and in so many different forms. combined with the
That's
genetics?
right. That's exactly right. And I feel, and genetics change over time due to environment. So it's kind of an interesting circle there happening, and I think we all see it. I don't know if you see it. I know that a lot of people I know are having health issues.
Oh, yeah.
Chronic, mostly GI issues, autoimmune issues. A lot of women are not able to get pregnant.
Right.
There's all kinds of chronic illnesses. Allergies are at a high. And these are all environmental factors. The toxins in our environment are out of control. If you look at all the toxins, I mean, I am brave enough to say that vaccines obviously are one of the toxins. They
Sure,
don't
they can play
affect.
a role with some children.
With some children,
My son
there's
had
no
a
question.
hyperactive immune system,
There's
and
no
they did play a
question.
role.
That's right. And then there's, of course, all the pesticides in our food, the
plastics, the
use
metals,
of plastics, absolutely.
Yeah, the pollution, which has been definitively tied.
That's right.
Pregnant women living near freeways are more likely to have a child with autism.
That's right. So there's a lot of different environmental studies, and when you look at them all together, you realize that the environment absolutely has an impact.
You know, one of the best things I ever read, Discovery Magazine said, if genetics are the gun, environment is the trigger.
Trigger, that's right. That's exactly right. And a lot of people will say, well, how come we're in the same environment? How come? And that is the redox cycle, right? I always, when I train my staff, I give them the example of, as young folks, you go out, everybody drinks. The next day, some people have a hangover, others don't, right? You could drink exactly the same amount of alcohol, and you will vary in how fast you detoxify. People vary. That's your redox cycle. You're born with that. That's a genetic component. And there are things you can do to improve that. There's no question. Glutathione helps that. There's a lot of vitamin B, methylation, so there's a lot of things that will help increase the redox cycle, improve it. But regardless, if you are a developing brain, if you're either a fetus or you are a young child, you are exposed to a certain number of toxins. You can either detoxify them or you get overload, period. Now, what happens if you are overloaded? And again, I use this example of kind of being hungover. It is going to affect your brain functioning. There's no question. It's going to affect your sensory input. It's going to affect how, it's like me today. I have 4 hours of sleep. I'm not straight on, I'm like trying very hard to catch up, but it's not the same. Your brain functions differently. And if you are a developing brain, a young brain, you're not observing around you, you're not learning, sounds are odd, sensory issues are off. And we know a lot of our children have sensory issues. They hear things differently, they see things differently. All of that causes anxiety. What you see with Wyatt, a lot of it is so much anxiety. All the control he tries to exhibit is about anxiety. It is.
Yeah, lessening his anxiety, ordering his world.
It's ordering his world. And so that's how I see autism. And so what we try to do, we try to remove all those environmental factors as much as possible. We try to help our kids identify the best diets for them, the healthier diets. I mean, everybody is healthier nowadays, gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free, everybody is. It's a healthier diet. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be everywhere, So, and we try to do things that will help their sleep. We try to stabilize them medically so that they can pay attention and learn. I mean, and you've seen this with Wyatt a million times.
Whole body approach.
When he's not well, he's just not able to cope with anything else.
And none of us are.
Right.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back because we have so many more questions. We won't get to all of them, but stay with us for more of Ask Dr. Doreen.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of March, we're going to be making a rain stick. And what's really cool about this project is that the steps are pretty simple, so your kids are going to be able to practice a lot of their fine motor skills when making it. Another bonus is that once the rain stick is completed, you guys can use it for a bunch of different programs under cognition and executive functions, things that deals with, seeing versus hearing, or using it also for auditory memory. But we'll get to that later. First, we gotta make the rain stick. So the materials you'll be needing are a paper towel roll, tape, paper, aluminum foil, rice, and any kind of materials you want to use to decorate your rain stick with. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is get a piece of tin foil that's about double the length as your paper towel roll. I got this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up like so, and I'm going to wrap my paper towel roll with it. Okay, and don't worry if it's too messy, okay? This is to give us a basic shape. Now once I've got this, I'm going to make it a little bit tighter, and I'm going to roll it and stick it inside of my paper towel roll. I want to make sure that it goes all the way through the paper towel roll, and what this does, it acts like a buffer so the rice will go down slowly through the tube. And see how that's in nice and in there? Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to take a piece of paper and cover one side, and I'm going to take a piece of tape and secure it over the bottom. All right, now that I've got this on, I'm gonna take my rice and pour it in. All right, now that I got the rice in there, I'm gonna seal the other side. Now that this is constructed, don't forget to use your imagination to decorate this any way that you want. And here's my finished rain stick. Don't forget you can decorate yours however you see fit. I decided to use tape and pipe cleaners, but you could always paint it, add sparkles, just whatever you feel like doing. Now that this is done, let's take a listen to it. What does that sound like to you? I think it sounds like rain too. What does rain look like? Ah, that is what rain looks like. You can ask them a whole bunch of different questions using this after it's already been made. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Hello, welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen, your chance to ask the world's foremost authority on autism behavior questions about your child. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. I am filling in for my colleague Shannon Penrod, who is home resting and recovering from pneumonia. We hope she is back next week. Doreen, let's get to this question. Rather long question. I'm going to try to read through it quickly. We have a 10-year-old with ASD, never had EI, early intervention, who struggles with irritability and mood swings daily. He's been on different medications. None seem to work. We tend to send him to a quiet area to relax and calm down before the storm. Sometimes it works, while many times we're too late. My question is, how long do we need to continue sending him to the quiet area to calm his anxiety? He's getting older. We do know that changes in routines are a trigger. Sometimes we don't know why his mood changes. We have a routine schedule with PACs, with rewards. He is verbal for scheduling, but he struggles with those changes too when we need to go to the next PAC. How long do we have to keep him in routines to avoid tantrums and meltdowns? Since life does change, and we like for him to understand that. Is this our normal with him? We are so stressed. We feel we are walking backwards in age. Please, some advice.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Can I use your pen?
Yes.
I just need to itemize. There's a lot of stuff here.
Okay.
So here we go. So we know that your child has irritability and mood swings, and you've tried different medications. I don't know what they are. I don't want to comment on the medications, but sometimes they are very helpful. So it would be important to have a professional continue looking at that.
And sometimes, in fact, they can cause adverse reactions and increase irritability.
They can, only because sometimes we have. I mean, if you have the right medication, quite honestly, I'm a psychologist before I'm a behavior analyst. I'm both, and I have to tell you that there's a vast array of literature that shows that any kind of mental disability or disorder is usually treated more effectively when there's a combination of behavioral intervention and medication. Why is that? And you've identified with this child that he has some level of anxiety. Anxiety, when it hits a certain level, yes, we can behaviorally treat it, but when it's past a certain level, you need something to produce a calming effect first and then teach the individual behavioral coping skills. Sometimes our anxiety is just so out of control that we've already developed a ton of obsessive compulsive behaviors and such, and they cannot, no matter how much control you have over the individual, they're very, very hard to get a hold of and reduce because the person is so in need of these repetitive behaviors. Medication helps take the edge off, reduces the need, and then we can teach healthier habits. It's a lot of times it's the combination that works. Now with this, so please, don't give up because there are always good medications to keep evaluating. But what I do want to say is there's a lot of things I see here. First of all, you say that you tend to send him to a quiet area to relax and calm down before the storm. And sometimes it works, many times we're too late. Okay. So that tells me, and this is a verbal child, and you have a PECS program going which has a schedule on it. So what it tells me is that you need to teach your child how to request the quiet time himself, because it seems like you're predicting it and sometimes you're too late. Many times you're too late. If your child had the ability to request, I need a time out from this, I need to go chill out for a minute, then it would he would have a sense of control over the situation. That could be a very easy thing. It could be a picture of him sitting in his quiet area, and that picture would be available to him so that he would request it, he would go get some time away from everyone. So that is something that would be very helpful, is giving him some control over when he gets to go in there. And you're saying, how long do we need to continue sending him to calm his anxiety? Now, the other more important thing here is that clearly it is not working all the time. Clearly it is not always anxiety. What you have to be very careful about with our children is that, they exhibit a behavior and then we make an assumption. We say, oh, this is because he's feeling anxious, I should let him calm down. Then you put him in there. And actually what's happening is he's getting out of a task.
Exactly. It
And
might be rewarding the very behavior, correct?
Absolutely. Well, yes, exactly. You're teaching him tantrum whenever you want to get out of this task. So you have to be very, very cautious about making sure you're identifying the function of his behavior correctly. And if you are allowing him to get out, the task demand doesn't go away. It's still there. He needs to come finish the task. And that is something that's really important, and visually you need to be able to show that. So if he has a PECS program, which by the way, I don't know why he has a PECS program, because he's verbal. But let's assume he has a visual calendar, visual, something that shows him the events of his day. Make sure those are like little pieces that can be taken off with Velcro and put on, and work with him to establish something that has regular breaks. And so you have a series of things that are the work that is required, and you have a number of slots, okay? And then give him, let's say, two Velcro cards that show break, right? My time to chill out. And make sure you have a time frame on each of these slots. So like each slot is 15 minutes or whatever it is. Take the slots and divide them more if you need to. But so that you get all the work and the breaks, and then allow him to put the order in there. So I want to do these three activities, and then I want to break. Then I want to do this activity, then I want to break. And work with him to do that, because that'll be something that works better for him. Oftentimes you'll find you initially need to reduce the number of demands. You start out with more breaks and fewer demands, and you gradually reduce the breaks and you increase the demands. So you might start out with 5 to-do activities and 5 breaks, and then a week later you'll have 4 breaks and 6 activities, and so on and so forth, and you get to a point where you're actually getting everything done. But from the perspective of the child, it's very, very important that things be fair. And that, yes, you might be right, they're getting overwhelmed. These are situations when it's complicated like this where I recommend a BCBA or someone local to do a functional assessment to identify you know, you yourself have said sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. That means his tantrums are not always due to the same reason. That means there's multiple functions. So sometimes he tantrums because maybe he's tired or anxious. Sometimes he tantrums because maybe he wants out of an activity. Sometimes he tantrums because maybe the activity is too demanding. Whatever it is, you have to identify the function for each time that he has a tantrum. That's why it's important to work with a BCBA, because those are the folks that can help you identify all the functions.
Okay.
I hope that helped.
Okay, great.
And
Next
don't
is
give up. And I know
don't
it's
give
very
up.
like
Never,
ever give up.
Give up.
I know it's very depressing, and it sometimes feels like, oh my gosh, it's getting harder, not easier.
You're so worn out.
You're so worn out, and your child's 10, and you're like, oh, you know, I can't handle this. Here's what I can say about that. You know, 20 years ago, if you had a 10-year-old, there was zero funding and very little access. So the positive side is there's a lot more funding nowadays and a lot more access. There's so many providers of behavioral interventions. There's so many states that have coverage. Please get coverage. Get your insurance coverage in place and get a program in place. You know, I'm a big, strong advocate for intensity, no matter what age. There's another question, I just will answer that quickly, which is behavior therapy as effective for adults with autism?
We talked about that last week, absolutely.
We often get this question, and absolutely, it's very, very effective.
Right. And I can tell you that from Wyatt, for this mom of a 10-year-old, if I take Wyatt's progress from where he was at 10 to where he is at 14, you would not believe the progress he's made. I mean, we have made enormous progress in the last 4 years, and I am of the mind that it's never going to end. And, you know, he's 14 now. I consider the next 6 years critical. And I'm going to do everything I can right now to do the full-on push to do what we can for the next 6 to 8 years. And then there'll be challenges after that, right?
Right. And you always say, Nancy, you know, like that you wish he had started earlier.
Yes.
Because he didn't start behavioral interventions or medical interventions until almost 5.
Medical, he was 4, started with Andrew Levinson.
And then 5 or so was therapy. But just imagine now if you hadn't done any of that, you know, and he would be 14
I
now.
think he would have. I think he was regressing, continuing to regress in some ways.
Right.
And I think I would have had a child that had. I remember, Doreen, and this is so important, I think, for families to think about. Do you remember back to a time when you would say, Shannon and I were talking about this last night on the phone. She said, I remember once having an experience they were at a friend's house, and the child came out and said to the dad, can we go play a video game together? And she remembered saying to herself, I just want to hear Jem say to his dad, can we go play a video game together? That's all I want.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. I remember saying after one of Wyatt's, you know, Wyatt had massive tantrums. We're talking biting, kicking.
I remember the bruises on your arm.
The bruises on my arms. I used to put makeup on my arms when I'd go out, okay?
Yeah.
I remember so many times getting down on my knees and saying, God, please just take the tantrums away.
Yeah.
Please just take the tantrums away. And we don't have those kind of physical tantrums anymore. Sometimes he'll still bite himself if he gets really, really frustrated. Those went away. So we have to remember the victories. We have to remember where we've come from, and you will have more victories. And life is about challenges, right, Doreen?
That's right.
And we're going to have to just, you know, overcome these. And you're going to have behaviors that come up, and we're going to have to tackle them one at a time.
That's right.
Try not to get discouraged, because you have to look back on the victories. And it sounds like this family has had some victories. He's verbal, and so keep going.
And that's the thing. We often, as you said, Nancy, we look at the other side. It's like, what have I not accomplished? When is this ever? Whereas really, you should just look at the fact that you've survived and your child is growing, no matter what pace. You know, I tell my staff, it's not just about helping children recover. It's about helping families get through the struggles.
Yes.
It's about holding the family together so that you are there so they can actually accomplish this step and the next step, and no matter what it is. It could be their child's growth, it could be battling out in court with a school district IEP, it could be their insurance funding, it could be sibling issues, it could be whatever it is. We're there to try to support the family to just go to the next level.
Well,
That's
I can just
what
tell
it
you,
is.
CARD has been, if I had not had my CARD supervisors in on my IEPs, we would not have made any of the progress we've made at school with socialization and behaviors. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad.
So let's move to this one because this is an important one.
Of course.
Her 10-year-old son has apraxia of speech. He is currently mainstreaming in a private school at grade 4 with a one-on-one aid. He has difficulty talking, but he can do math beyond his grade level. Great. One difficulty he is facing is sensory seeking. He is very distracted, needs frequent redirection to stop him from visual sensory fingers. I'm assuming it's something like this. Wyatt has done that in the past. He's very, is there anything that would help to reduce his visual sensory issues, fingers and touching objects?
Right. So I don't know exactly, it could be visual sensory, but then it also says touching objects. So I'm not sure if it's visual or sensory, like tactile.
Right.
So it's one or the other or both. And, we have a series of replacement type behaviors. The only thing we know how to do with these types of what we call self-stimulatory behaviors is to replace them with something that is more, let's say, appropriate or acceptable, and then to allow the child to do them in specific time frames so that they kind of get it out of their system. So what you would do is you would basically allow the child to engage in very tactile behaviors. You would try to find ones that are, let's say, touching objects. You'd want to get this child, how old is he? 10 years old.
10.
You'd want to get him perhaps into building clay structures or, anything that has to do with some sort of tactile activity. It could be, baking, whatever it is that involves tactile activity, and allow that to do an hour of that every day, and then don't allow it the rest of the day. The same thing with visual. The interesting thing with visual is there are a lot of activities nowadays, because there's so many things to do on computers, that actually do help stimulate the visual needs that our children have. And if you allow them certain hours of the day and they're clear that they can go for it, they can go free during that time frame, and you tell them, hey, you're going to lose that activity, you're going to lose that reward, that time frame. If you do it outside of the time frame, the kids get it and they hold it together, and then they do it during that free time, where they're allowed. And that's really the way to go. Sensory self-stimulatory type stuff, sensory self-stimulatory type stuff, you can't just eliminate.
No, you have to find a replacement that is more appropriate and give them time for that in an appropriate way. Great. We've only got about a minute and a half, right, Kelby? I'm going to try to get to this one question. Her daughter is 12 years old. She's nonverbal, attends a school for special needs. Her teachers alternate between her AAC and a PECS board. They report that she often throws her AAC, so they mainly use PECS. She uses it to communicate preferred activities and food, but needs prompts and a lot of assistance. I'm worried she still can't communicate her wants and needs, like when she is in pain or thirsty or needs a break. Her IEP is coming up. I want her school to get serious about increasing her communication and have really specific goals for her. Any advice?
Yes. So, the use of an AAC or a PECS board is very, very, very important. You can't just put it in place and then not deal with it or not use it appropriately. Teaching a child to communicate preferred activities and foods is great. She should be at the point where if she's still requiring prompts, that means that it's not being used appropriately. It hasn't been taught appropriately. In other words, she gets those things that she wants without the use of the AAC or PECS. And it's very, very important that they do this right. And of course, there's a million other things where she should be able to tell you she wants various activities, how she feels, all those types of things are part of a typical PECS program. And of course, if you're using an OG device, then anything like that could be taught. I don't know your child's other areas of functioning, but I would suggest that you list all these different things that you've written here and just bring them up at the IEP. If you are able to get into a behavioral program, request an ABA program from your school. Just say, I need an ABA. I need a Most schools nowadays have a BCBA or someone who's a behaviorist who can help establish some of this. Since you're dealing with an OG device, the person actually who would have a lot of expertise is your speech path. The speech pathologist at school should be able to give you a lot more advice on moving this up. But to be honest, and I apologize, we don't have a lot of time to give you more advice on this. We do have some programs that we've done on OG devices and on PECs. We also have some very good PowerPoints. Maybe next week I can forward them to Shannon and she can put them up for you. But what I do want to say is you need to persist. You need to continue bugging the people at the IEP and don't give up and keep calling them back and saying, this is not fast enough progress. On an IEP, they specifically will write the goals and the people responsible. Hold them to that responsibility. Keep following up. As parents, we get tired of following up with our schools, but it is their responsibility.
Yes, it is.
And this
Put
is
it back on 'em.
communication.
Right.
It's so important.
Right. Okay, well, we are out of time, Doreen.
Yes,
Gosh, we could go on forever. I want to just say thank you to all the words of encouragement that you've given me in filling in for Shannon. We heard from Haircut Mom. She said, thank you for the stevia tips, Doreen, and
I
the
love
encouraging
Haircut
words. We've got a couple we did not get to today.
We'll get to them
Shannon will
next
make them a
week.
priority next week. And once again, thank you all. Thank you, Doreen.
It's a pleasure.
This is such
Thank
a
you so
blessing to our
much.
families to
Thank
have
you.
your advice.
Thank you very much.
We will be back after this break with Let's Talk Autism without Shannon and Nancy, yours truly. Okay, stay with us.
There's Miss Jessica. Hello. Say hi. What do you see? What is it? What's that? Giraffe. He's getting really good at that. How about that guy? Who's this guy?
We have this one program called NVI, which is non-vocal imitation. So he basically has to imitate whatever we do. So we were working on object manipulation, and then Tuesday I tried doing more gross motor things like clapping hands or standing or jumping, and he was able to imitate all of those.
Ready? Do this. Yay! Very good. Okay, here you go. Who's hiding now? Me? Do this. Good job. Okay, here you go. Okay, let's do another one. Ready? Do this. Yay! All right. Here you go, Rockstar. Oh, that's so cool. Alrighty, ready? Do this. Good job. Very good. So that was actually a fine motor action with a touch nose. Oh, yum. How did that happen? You want more? You want more of this? More? Okay. Good asking. We'll do a couple more actions, okay? Do this. Good job. Do this. Good job. Do this. Good try. Here. Can you try? Do this. There you go. All right. Here you go. He's been doing a lot more on his own, even just when I attempt him by just holding the object, not necessarily asking him to imitate more. Cat, that's right. He does do it on his own now, which is really cool. Good asking, buddy. Out. Why not up? That one's up. Oh, there you go. See? How many up do you want to go? Touch the block? God, what is it? What? Good job. Sorry, I'm just curious. Okay. I'm interested too. Touch shoes. Where's the shoes? That's a good try. Okay. Let's see. You touch crab.
Thank you. Did you see that? What is it? Crab. See, crab. That was so funny. I didn't specify, huh? Touch block. Good job. What is it? What is this? Block. This is his receptive labels, so what I just did basically. And our supervisor had written down things that's in his environment that he might not know or that he might know the labels to, or if he's just seen it or heard the label for it, not necessarily know how to say it per se. And I just went through block, guitar, bear, plain, cat with him, and so he actually knows all of them. So I'm actually going to go through his environment just to see other things like shoes. He actually knew almost everything on here except fork, I think. Yeah. So that's actually really impressive. You amaze me every day, kiddo.
We're taking a walk. We just finished dinner, getting ready to go to bed. But part of our after dinner tradition suddenly has been to take a walk. Make sure. Say, come on, Mama. Come on, Mama. Right, Jack? And then we say, stop. Go. Stop. Go. So we're practicing our stops and goes. Stop. Good stopping. Go. Stop. Good stopping, Jack. Stop. Good stopping. Good job, love.
Look at me.
Say bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. As you can see, Shannon is not here today. I am continuing to do some fill-in, a little pinch hitting for her, and we'll be hosting the show solo this week, which, let me tell you, is nowhere near as fun as when I have my good buddy, fellow autism mom and dear friend next to me. Shannon, I know you're watching. I'm going to get you on the horn before the show ends because I love to talk to you about some of the things that took place during Ask Dr. Doreen and this hour. I do want to let you know that we are continuing our Autism Family Portraits segment. We have a dad here today, one of my favorite dads. His name is Doug Baker. He is really a leader in the autism field. He is an advocate, a financial consultant. He has a young adult son with autism, and he is a wealth of information on so many aspects of having a child with autism, including how to plan for the future. But today he's here specifically to talk about his son, Scott, and his journey as an autism dad. And he has so much to share with us. So we're going to get to that after we do some in the news stories. Now, I want to apologize for constantly having to look down and read. We don't have what they call a teleprompter in the television business, which if you see anchors in the evening news that just look straight at the camera and you're wondering, how do they remember all that? Well, they're not remembering all that. What they're doing is they're reading something that rolls down, and you can get very proficient at this and look like you've got the best memory in the world. We don't have that here, so that's why I have to frequently look down at my notes and at the articles, because memorizing them is just not a possibility in this crowded brain of mine. So we have some very positive stories and some touching stories that are in the news today. First off, is Asperger's funny? Is Asperger's funny? That's a good question. How do you laugh at a disability? This comes from Esquire.com, and it's about a producer by the name of Mark Duplass, whose name or face you likely know from The League, Togetherness, or countless other projects with his older brother, Jay. The Duplass brothers produced Asperger's Are Us. It had its world premiere at the South by Southwest Festival. It's already among the buzziest films of the festival. This was dated back March 13th, so very recent. It's a documentary about a comedy troupe of the same name, Asperger's Are Us. A story about 4 men who fall at various points on the spectrum and turn that fact into a comedy. Shortly after the film's premiere, Netflix announced that it scooped up the distribution rights, so you're sure to see it very soon. This interviewer had a beer with Duplass to talk about the project, the nature of the streaming, and what it feels like to laugh at something at the surface appears to be painful. I, for one, believe we should always have the ability to laugh at our circumstances. Laughter is what gets us through, but obviously we have to do that in a way that doesn't offend. And I think because the 4 men that are the subject of this documentary are on the spectrum themselves, it certainly is coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So the interviewer asked him how this came to be. It was a pet project. And he said, he joked about it, but it was true. All false modesty aside, he was seen as a person who can take an independent film and blow that up. And he said he had a feeling it was going to be good. And it's about the nature of being human. And when asked whether he thought it was a movie about Asperger's, he said he saw it as a coming-of-age story about 4 friends first and foremost. He said it's a slightly hyperbolized version of exactly how I operate in the world. So as an artist, he set out to show people, don't give me your pity. If I'm good, I'm good. If I'm not, fine. So you can go ahead and look at this, continue to read this interview. The question that was posed to him, is Asperger's funny? Great question. I'm the last person in the world to answer it. I'm a producer of a documentary who doesn't actually understand this world fully. What I can personally relate to in the movie and what allowed me to feel comfortable is to say, I know I can help with this movie. And there's a specific thing called the comedy of discomfort, okay? So that's what he's out to do. And he says he's a cheeseball at heart. He loves an underdog story. And we are really interested in seeing this. And I would like to get Mark on the show. So we're going to get working on that. And maybe we can get him on as a future guest to explore this a little bit more. Asperger's Are Us. So be on the lookout for that documentary. 2 charities in England are calling for mandatory training on autism for all teachers. The letter calls on Nick Morgan, who, it doesn't say who he is in this article, to include autism training. An initial training teacher framework is currently under review. They have written a letter to The Guardian, influential paper in England, calling for all teachers there to be trained in autism, saying that without this, children with autism are at risk of being misunderstood and marginalized, bullied, etc. The letter calls for autism to be included in all training. The signatories include MPs and school staff. It was put together by the National Autistic Society, otherwise known as the NAS, and ambitious about autism. The campaign argues that more than 1% of children on the autism spectrum, almost 3/4 of those in mainstream schools, and virtually every teacher will have an autistic child in a class at some point. They note training connected to autism is not mandatory, while some teachers have no training in special needs of any kind. The chief executive at NAS, Mark Lever, said thousands of autistic children are being disadvantaged every year. He added, This is one of the reasons that children on the spectrum are 4 times more likely to be excluded than those without special education needs. He continued, we don't expect teachers to be experts in autism. However, a basic knowledge of lifelong disability and where to go for extra help would make a huge difference to these students. For instance, many children on the spectrum are sensitive to light and sound, that an overhead light or humming computer can be physically painful. It's almost impossible to follow a lesson. Simple changes like seating arrangements so the student is away from the light, letting them wear ear defenders, can make a huge difference. An NAS survey last year found that 58% of children on the spectrum said the change would most improve school for them. That would be the most important change for them would be for teachers to better understand them. Separate research by Ambitious About Autism found more than half of parents who had kept a child with autism from school because a lack of proper support is there. That's a shocking statistic. Half of parents have kept a child away from school because of lack of support there. So there's also been a lot of coverage in the case of Matthew Garnett, a 15-year-old with autism. Shannon and I covered this story 2 weeks ago, with autism, ADHD, and anxiety, who spent 6 months in a secure mental health treatment unit because of a lack of specialist care in the school. A Department of Education spokesperson said, we want every child to receive the best education possible, including those with special educational needs or disabilities. They said that all teachers are already trained in how to support children with special educational needs as part of their teacher training. And on top of that, we have commissioned an independent group of experts to develop a new framework for core initial teacher training content. It would seem that parents think otherwise. So, Navy funds autism screening app, hopes for help with PTSD. The Navy is paying for research into an app to screen for autism in hopes that it could be eventually tweaked to look for signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's a really interesting development. I'm going to get to a final few in the news stories after we get to our first guest, Doug Baker, as part of our continuing series, Autism Family Portraits. So please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment to hear from this exceptional father. Stay with us.
Kaczynski, the Pocket Occupational Therapist, and we're here in Dallas, Texas at the Future Horizons Autism Super Conference. So the book is the Special Needs School Survival Guide, and it's everything you wanted to know about school. It is, okay, so it starts out with just different diagnoses that you might see, and then I explain them in clear terms, no technical jargon, and then each little diagnosis area has about, 50 to 100 activities that you can do at home or at school or cheaply and effectively. So it's just full of information that you can use right now. And the cool thing about it is at the end of every chapter are resources that you can use and access in the internet from a computer. And it's not just for kids with any diagnoses either. It's for kids that are just having trouble with handwriting or with dressing in school or transitions too. Well, both of my kids are on the autism spectrum, so it's important to me that when I learn something for other people, as I research it for occupational therapy, I want to try it at home. So then I take what works and I put it in a book, and what doesn't work gets thrown out the window. And the other thing is I've just started to research for webinars, because our kids, if our kids are aging, so they start out these cute little babies with autism, and now they're getting to be teenagers and young adults, and we need help with modifying the environment for them, transition planning, and especially for IEP goal writing, for functional things that they can work on, not just handwriting, but then going beyond into the transition to young adulthood. Yeah, the misnomer at this point in the school systems is that we just do handwriting. So we are actually not handwriting teachers. We can modify or help rectify a grip that's inefficient. So if a child doesn't have that nice, pretty little tripod grasp, we can help to get that. However, when the kid's in 2nd or 3rd grade, then we look at efficiency. So if the grasp is efficient, if it's a quadrupod grasp, or if it's some kind of funky grasp, and the child can write efficiently, then we leave it alone. But if not, then we go to electronic accommodations. So OTs then can look at keyboarding and what kinds of keyboards would fit the student best. Also sensory processing, as the kids get older, it looks different. So we can look at sensory processing as it relates to function in the school. And then we also can look at behavior and transition planning. Other things we can do is work on seating. So if the child's having trouble sitting still in the classroom, we can modify that too. So not just handwriting, not just sensory, but we look at behavior, transitions, so anything that affects that student's school day. Right, so that's a really good question, because sensory processing disorder did not make it into the last DSM, which is the way that medical professionals classify disorders. So it did make it into the classification under autism, but sensory processing disorder is very confusing, and a lot of therapists treat it differently. So the general overview is that sensory processing is either a heightened response to stimuli in the environment or a too low, which is hypo, response. So if the student perceives every noise around them is equally as important, or every feeling, so I'm sitting here, I can feel the chair, my sweater, the noise around me, then it's hard to concentrate and focus in the classroom on what you're supposed to be paying attention to. So we would use something, maybe a suggestion could be a weighted lap pad or some kind of fidget tool for the student to fidget with, or we can even look at special positioning in the classroom, so preferred seating. Then with sensory, transitions can be hard because any unexpected bump in the classroom or in line can set the child off into a fight or flight, which is when they really have a tantrum and freak out. So when they're in a fight or flight mode, they may fly off the handle for no apparent reason, maybe just being bumped by another student. So it's our job to be detectives and to figure out why the student is having that meltdown. So my CDs were created for my own kids my son in kindergarten didn't like the fire drills. So he was afraid to even step foot into the classroom because the fire alarm may sound. Of course, the school's not going to say, oh, let's just set off the fire alarm for your son, Bob. So we thought, where can we get a fire alarm? So we went into a recording studio and picked a whole plethora of sounds that you couldn't control, fireworks, thunder, sirens, and we put them on a CD, and I wrote nursery rhymes, changing the words to blender, blender, it's okay, or different little Mary Had a Little Lamb is something to do with thunder. So they're kind of fun, and that way the student can control the volume of the sound. It's not a listening therapy, there's no headphones involved. It's just a fun way to control sounds that you normally couldn't control. So they're for sale at my website, thepocketot.com.
We are back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's Nancy minus Shannon as she's recovering from pneumonia. And I am here with our Autism Family Portrait Series, and we have a friend of the show, Doug Baker. You've been on before, Douglas Baker.
A couple of times.
Yeah, good to see you, my friend.
New studio.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Isn't this great?
You need a teleprompter.
We need a teleprompter,
There you go.
but Kelpie's got it all going on here and handling it for us. Doug Baker is a specialized family consultant, speaker, advocate, specialist of autism in the special needs communities. As a parent of an adult son with autism, he has over 20 years of experience navigating the system, resources, agencies, professionals, legal and financial demands. He hopes to help educate. He periodically takes stabs at writing and publishing, and he is one of the few nationally that understands and integrates the legal benefits and financial strategies around the lifestyle demands of parenting a child with autism. And if that were not enough, my friend, you spent 2 decades as a sales and management executive in the technology industry, implementing process improvement and infrastructure systems into some of America's largest finance, healthcare, education, and technology organizations. Woo, Doug, I'm tired. Are you?
Well, there's a lot to learn out there. I haven't stopped,
You sure haven't.
Yeah.
I first met you at a conference, I think, Autism Society. It was called The Future Is Now.
Down in downtown LA at the
in downtown LA. That was a number of years ago.
Correct.
Yeah, and the future is now, and they were damn right about that. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They were darn right about that. And the future was a long time ago, and we are late on this bandwagon. And I want to talk to you about that, about where our young adults are today, because we spent time yesterday with the Autism Works Now people, Joanne Lara and Susan Osborne, who are doing job training. Not sure when that's going to air. Kelby, is that going to air on Thursday, or you don't know? We think it might air tomorrow, but we're going to keep you informed on that. So at any rate, Doug, we're here to talk about you and Scott today. And we'll talk a little bit about your mission and your work, but tell us about Scott. Oh, and first let me just say, you're not only the father of Scott, who will be 26 in April, but you are the father of Christine, who was Scotty's champion as a young sister. She'll be 24 in April. And tell us what you just told me about Christine. She's tougher than Scott.
Well, my son Scott with autism is a lot easier to raise than her at this point in time. She's a 23-year-old young adult trying to figure it out and trying to learn to love herself.
When she's got that done, will you have her call me?
Yeah, okay, I will, sure.
All right, so tell us about, when was Scott diagnosed, Doug?
Well, Scott was diagnosed at about 22 months, probably earlier than most families were back in the early 90s. But his issues all started within a week of his MMRs.
A week of the what?
MMRs,
His
the
MMR.
mouse, measles, rubella.
But let me ask you, are you a parent that's considered anti-vax, or
No,
you?
no, I'm not considered vaccine. I don't like when parents overdo 10 or 15 vaccines at once. I think that
so
could
you're
overload
a fan of
anybody's
spacing them out and
yeah.
caution.
I think I looked
Like
at
me.
I think I looked at the vaccine as the straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
I overheard Doreen talking earlier about the number of toxins
Yes.
in our systems, and I really, the toxin phenomenon has really started over the last 120 years in our world, especially the United States, and so through a few generations, I just think it's weakened many of our genetic capabilities in the environment and certain things going in there.
Along with antibiotics and many other things, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was the MMR that you said was kind of the straw that broke the camel's
It
back.
seemed,
what happened?
within
It
a
seemed
week,
like it.
he stopped. He had about, this was about 13 months old. He had about 25 words.
Right.
He had started walking actually at 8 months. He moved really from
so similar to Wyatt. You and I talked about this.
He didn't even go to the hands and knees crawl. He kind of went from the army
neither did
crawl
Wyatt.
to furniture walking and boom.
Right.
And it's back in 1992 when he was diagnosed. We didn't have an internet.
That was kind of the dark ages,
It
wasn't it?
was really scary. 3 in 10,000 births were autism.
Right.
And when we finally did get diagnosed, we were almost 8 months pregnant with my daughter.
Okay.
And then it was, you are 25 times likely greater to have a child with the same or worse conditions. So as you can well imagine, the mother of my children at the time was frantic.
Okay, your ex-wife.
My ex, I call her the bio mom. She was never, I don't know if she deserves to be called an ex-wife with the way, there's never been a good relationship. The hardest thing that's been in my relationship with my son has been his mother.
Okay, and we'll talk about that later too. Let's get back to when the diagnosis. So,
and it was actually from, when Eric Courchain, Autism Center for Excellence out of San Diego, when he was a young researcher, he was one of the guys on the team that diagnosed my son back in 1992. So we went through the marching of learning about this strange phenomenon, and when the meltdowns were going down in supermarkets when Scott was 5, 7, you had to focus on the kid, and you'd get all the comments, and
Bad parent.
I would often turn around and say, hey, you know what, the kid's autistic,
right?
And you get some people who go, well, there are a lot of artistic kids out there. No, you didn't hear what I said. So yeah, you were a bad parent, and you just had to learn to focus on the child and finishing and trying to redirect him so he stops his meltdown. Even after 10 minutes, you have to continue to stay focused there, not worry about what anybody else thought.
Right.
And that's just where you just get in your life. And then as we get older and they get older, we don't care what other people think anyways.
Right, that's right. That's one of the good things about getting older, right?
Yeah, correct.
We just don't give a darn.
Doesn't matter. Not everyone's going to be happy.
That's right. So, okay, so it was 1992 or thereabouts.
He was diagnosed. He's born in 1990.
Right, and then you know, clearly there was not a lot of ABA back then. So
There was no ABA. Well, actually, ABA was offered.
It was.
It was a
okay.
private program out of this new group of it at UCLA.
Right.
It was 40 hours a week. It was something, I think at the time, it was $4,200 or $4,500 a month.
Right.
Back in the early
and obviously
mid-90s.
No insurance coverage then.
And
regional center.
Regional center was there, but regional center, you know, like everybody, even today, they got a zip lip. They're not going to tell you anything,
Right.
Because if they say that you deserve these, law says that they have to tell you all the services available. If they do that, they'll be out of money in the first 3 months of their fiscal year.
Right. Their job is to protect their money,
Protect
like so
their
many
money,
others.
like a private nonprofit.
Right.
Being paid by the state of California, which I still don't really understand
Yeah.
how that works, but okay.
Okay, so he did not get any intensive ABA.
He did get
Early.
intensive ABA early. No, there was
Okay.
no such thing available.
All right. What did you find was most helpful to Scott as he continued then to get a little older and was, you know, was he in the public school, private
Yes,
school?
he
What?
was in
Okay.
public school most of the time. I would actually say the best thing that happened to my son was his sister being born. And the reason being is because as they started going, he knew in the back of his head, you could see it, that he was older and he should be doing the stuff that she's doing, but he wasn't. So she dragged him along, which was kind of like a great, what do you call it?
She was like
She was a great
teacher's aide.
windbreak.
Yeah.
She was teaching him, and he was in her wake. He was learning along that she was learning.
Right.
And they have always been close. They're not as close right now, but right now, that'll change.
Of course.
Because she lives out on her own. He still lives with his mother in Costa Mesa. I have him 2 or 3 weekends a month, plus any extra time. And anytime I can get him off work and do something special when I've got the free time, we'll do that as well. So, in fact, I wasn't able to bring him, but I brought pictures, and you'll notice I've got pictures of he and I all over the place. We always take a quick pod picture with my
Kelby,
camera.
are you popping any of those up, my friend? I'm going to ask Kelby to pop a few of those pictures up while we're continuing to talk, so people can see Scotty.
There's another thing that just was natural, and that was to kindly push him along the way. And in fact, that's a new book that Temple Grandin just came out with, is you want to push your children ever so gently, but you want to keep pushing a kid with special needs in order to be better.
Sure.
And when I talk to parents, I often expound the virtues of having your kid become independent. Mm-hmm. Because once your kid comes out of your household and learns to live in a independent or a group home or something, they take on more responsibility for taking care of themselves. But when they're at home, they've got the parents to do things for them, so the kids aren't as driven. Mm-hmm. So the more you could push them out in independence, even as little as independent as they may ever be, the better it is for them. Mm-hmm. So,
so you're a big proponent of teaching independence and probably teaching vocational skills early.
Tremendous. In fact, I encourage every one of my families to start their transition planning at 14.
Right.
Even though it's a law to be in place by 16, the schools won't do it until they're 16.
Yeah. No, you have to start. You have to start early. So before we go to break, I just want to know what. As a dad, I mean, it's a whole different thing to be a dad. Mm-hmm. My husband Reed struggled immensely with it.
Oh, we all do. We deny. One thing men tend to do is we don't want to get involved, so we want to make the money and make sure the money's there and let them get the services. And in the back of my head, it was always, just kind of mysteriously came on. So we pray that it mysteriously goes away.
And it doesn't.
And autism doesn't typically do that. And I've met thousands of families, and I can't tell you how many families, probably half of them will blow through their retirement savings trying to cure their kid.
The magic bullet.
The magic bullet.
Yeah.
And had I caught some of these families earlier, I might have been able to help them save some of their money and keep them from wasting it and thinking about the future.
Right. I mean, we know intensive early intervention works.
Correct.
We know
and that's
intensive
proven.
ABA, and it's proven. But we're talking about, situations where families are sending on all kinds of unproven
Chelation
therapies.
therapy, hyperbaric chambers. I mean, you know, some of these things have good places.
Some kids
Yeah,
respond to individual treatment.
And you do. Every so often you'll
Yeah.
get a kid that responds, and then,
Right.
you know, then the next 2,000 don't.
Right.
But the doctor, in the meantime, has made a lot of money along that way.
Right, and you've got parents that are off pursuing stem cell and what was
Correct,
the parasites that people were, you know, kids
Yeah.
were eating worms and stuff. And, you know, there are all of these so-called cures that we know it's not, there is no magic bullet. And
out of
even
scope,
the top biomedical doctors, like Dr. Andrew Levinson out of Florida, will tell you there is no magic bullet. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But as a father, Rodney Peete wrote a book, Not My Boy.
Yeah.
You guys have this hope and dream to have, you know, the next baseball player, the next whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, you get a son or daughter with autism. It's devastating, isn't it?
It was very difficult for me. I found that I love working with kids. And actually in 2002, I stepped away from technology to help advocate for Scott. And it took me a few years out of technology, which took me a few years too long, and then they didn't want me back in. It turned out to be 10 years, and that was a very expensive jaunt or stint of education, but it taught me things that you'd never be able to learn in a textbook. You'd never learn unless you lived it, unless you, you know, you're living, breathing, eating it, and next thing you know, you've learned all these things, and then you're kind of like a hope of insight to younger parents. And I just found that, in fact, I was in financial services for a while, trying to help families with special needs and help them with their money. And I found that the money side wasn't even important. Mm-hmm. It was helping the family with their challenges and needs. So I stepped away from financial services, and now I'm just a consultant. And now I just work with kids, and then I get a lot of practice from my own son.
Right.
Because in fact, today I'll drive back down to South Orange County, and I'll pick him up this afternoon, and we'll be in the gym tonight to work out. And I try to get him in a couple days a week because he likes that health thing.
Yeah.
And he's really good at it.
You said that some of the things that have been most helpful for Scott are structure, routine, encouragement, gentle flexing, and expanding routine and socialization.
Correct. Anytime you can take him out of his comfort zone of what we call his routine.
Okay.
Is building a
Because
skill.
that's that order he's trying
Yeah, he's used to, it's like,
anxiety.
it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime.
Right.
It's funny because we've gone to events, and you go there and it's 2 o'clock and there's a spread of food.
Yeah.
Scott's not eating. Well, I'll eat at dinner.
Right.
It's like, Scott, at dinner, this food's not going to be here.
Right.
So I'm going to recognize, so sometimes before we even go to an event, I said, we're going to a party. I said, there's going to be food there. But I said, the way it's going, there won't be dinner. So we're going to have to eat food as we go. So if you prepare him,
right.
He's good with it.
But if you don't prepare him, there's anxiety.
Then there may be a little anxiety because now all of a sudden it's 12:15 and I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. Well, Scotty, we ate at 9:30. It doesn't matter, but if at 9:30, I said, well, you know what? We're having breakfast late, so we'll probably have a late lunch today. Probably 1 or 2.
So you prep him.
I kind of prep him, but other times I let him go to that side. Mm-hmm. A little anxious, and I said, well, we'll get there. Just we're almost there and so forth. So I have him, So he's really good with that.
You're breaking the comfort zone.
You break the comfort zone for building those executive skills.
Yeah.
Of being able to adjust on the move.
Right, like we have to in life.
And we talk about it all the time.
Right.
So life's not a routine.
Right. No, it sure isn't. Okay. Well,
it seems like a routine, and you're getting it all over the place, but no.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about where Scott is today, mm-hmm. what he's achieved, and just some of the pride you take in him now. Okay.
My 6'4", 11-year-old. That's what I call him.
All right. We'll be back with Autism Family Portraits, featuring Autism Dad and pioneer in the field of parent advocacy, Doug Baker.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
And we are back with Let's Talk Autism with Nancy flying solo, missing Shannon, but we'll get her on the phone in a little bit. We are with Doug Baker as part of our Autism Family Portraits, and there is Doug. Your son is so handsome, Doug, and so are you.
He can grow more hair on his face than I can.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
This is me 4 days without shaving.
Yeah, and 6'4". He's a tall kid.
Yeah, he's just about 6 feet. He's just a tad under 6'4", and he's I call him my 11-year-old mentally, but he's some parts of him are older and some parts are younger.
Sure, there's always splinter skills that our kids have.
And he is a wonderful kid. Mm-hmm. He touches so many lives. In fact, when I go places and people have met him, and then I see them again, they go, oh, they always ask, how's your son? Yeah. Or where's Scott? Or like, when I moved out of South Orange County in 2010, and he used to go to the gym with me down there, and then I was out for 5 years, and then I moved back down there at the end of this last year. It was the people that, that he knew 5 and 6 years ago that would come up and say, Scott, God, I haven't seen you, whatever. It was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So,
how'd you get him into fitness? Because I want to know. I'm trying to get my boy.
It was, I've always done it. And when he was younger, when he was about 14, he would get up in the morning and he'd want to watch, the TV and the videos and stuff like that. On the weekends I had him. So I'd bolt off to the gym for an hour and a half, and then I'd come back and he'd still be, and he'd, know to get cereal and that to have his breakfast. And I just started saying, why don't we go to the gym together? We were doing bike riding and so forth. And the next thing you know, he started in. And
he probably looked at it as a way to spend time with you, too.
Well, he was chubby until just past 13. Okay. And in fact, there was a couple pictures in here I noticed that it was just before and just after he went through his growth spurt. He went through this growth spurt about 13 or 14, all of a sudden, boom. Yeah. We weren't worried about him being chubby anymore. Right. But he kind of grew, and he was about 6'3" by the time he was about 16.
Okay. But a lot of our parents do worry about weight problems with their kids.
Yes.
Some of our kids tend to overeat excessively. And but you really encouraged him to do fitness with you.
Well, and I'm encouraging him to cut back on some of those bad foods like the chips. He still likes his soda every day. I don't even drink soda. I mean, I'll take a taste of Dr. Pepper here and there, and
Right.
so forth. But so and he was at one time he was at about 231 pounds, but he had a little bit of stomach. So I said, well, Scotty, I said, you'll look a lot better, and you feel a lot better if we drop about 10 pounds. So we got him down to about 227, and now he's down to about 225.
Okay.
And this is over about 6 months.
Yeah.
Where 8 months. So now our goal is to get to 222, and then we're kind of working our way down to about 218.
Okay.
If we can get him down to 218, close to how much I weigh. Then he'll have those little mushroom tops and stuff, whatever stuff that's bothering.
You said in our pre-interview and when we asked you how you encouraged Scott, you said lots of love and lots of treats. Today it's all love.
Today it's all love. Yeah, when you were younger, encouraging the good behavior and so forth. Obviously there were treats involved or whatever.
Yeah,
it
the
was.
reward system.
The reward system.
Basic ABA.
Today it's all love, and then he never forgets. Dad, do you have my allowance for me? I love it when he
pretty typical there.
He's pretty good about what he knows about the money in his pocket. I still don't think he knows the difference between $2,000 or $200,000, but he knows what a couple $100 is, and he's proud. He works.
He works. Tell us about where he's working.
5 days a week in a Goodwill program.
Okay.
At Marshall's. And he's been there about 2.5 years. And he works from about 8:30 to about 12 or 12:30 every day.
Okay.
And
then after that?
There's a dry process. I think there's 3 kids in his work group of 4. So he's usually home by about 2. He relaxes for a little bit, and sometimes during the midweek I'll pick him up about 3:30 and we'll get to the gym when I have time. And then Saturdays or Fridays and Saturdays, a lot of time when I pick him up right after work, we're at the gym Friday and Saturday, and Sunday we go to church together. Usually, how that all works.
Right,
Sometimes we go to church Saturday night, and he doesn't like that because then I can take him to the gym again Sunday morning.
Right, the routine is messed up. So he's working. He is living with his mother.
Lives with his mother.
But spends considerable time with you.
As much as he can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at this point, with Scott being 26, with mild to moderate ASD, what are your hopes and dreams for him from this point forward, Doug?
Well, it would be great to have him getting into more of a, animal handler skill.
Okay.
He learned how to care for horses.
Right.
He could probably be a pretty good kid around a barn.
Okay.
For cleanup, for walking horses, for doing that kind of stuff, washing. That would Scott is all about cowboys. He's all about the cowboy stuff. He's all about the train, the steam engine trains. I mean,
right.
His goal would be to move to Colorado, work for the Durango-Silverton Tourist Railroad, and be an engineer.
Well, but he could possibly do something close to that.
Correct. And it's I've kind of tried to encourage him to finish and get a high school equivalency, which in the right circumstances he could. He got in some trouble in the junior college programs and threatened a kid, so he's no longer invited back there. So I'm trying to get him back on an online program this year, see how well he does, and then see if we can kind of segment out to where he might be able to get a high school diploma. Because that way he would be smart enough and maybe have the focus enough to potentially drive a car. Now,
right.
Will he ever be able to drive a car? I don't know. I don't think so. But
I don't know that any of us are going to need to drive cars in the future, Doug, because haven't
they're
you
all
heard
be
about the
self-driving.
self-driving cars? And,
That's right.
and everybody's doing Uber and all these other things. So if I had the option of not driving, I'd sure take it.
I love driving. I had to take my dad's car away when he crashed it when he was 90.
Yeah.
And even today, he's in a wheelchair and he looks at me like, I need a car.
I need a car.
I got it. You don't know what it's like not having a car.
That's a guy thing. That's a guy thing. Okay. Wyatt wants to drive right now. He says, why do I have to wait till I'm 16? Well, he's nowhere near ready to even learn to drive, but he always wants to. He says, I want to talk to the police and change the law.
But at 16, you could have Wyatt get evaluated for driver's training through the Department of Rehab.
Okay. Well,
now,
you are a wealth of information.
and trust you and me, I consume a lot of information from a lot of advocates and so forth. And one of my real good advocates was, she had a couple of kids, And she was the one that told me that 6 years ago. She goes, hey, I had my kids in the Department of Rehab at 16, and you can't usually go in there till they're 18. But if you call Department of Rehab and say, do you have this program, no one will tell you they have it.
Well, they do keep these things, secretive. So,
Like the school system, like the regional center, like
right.
Yeah.
So, I think we need to have you back and get some specific questions that you maybe can help me and Shannon work up about things parents need to know, because you've walked this journey.
Well, it's all out there. In fact, it's funny because I had a meeting with a couple this last week, educated couple and so forth. We sat down, they were concerned, and some money were in their daughter's name. And as we started talking, and it's funny because I feel like I went through a law school because I could spout out all sorts of stuff because I've just learned it. And then afterwards, he was kind of saying, well, he says, we're really interested in getting that money out of our name, and if ABLE accounts were available in California, we could do that now, but you didn't know enough about it. I said, well, it's not legal, it's not available yet. But we went through a few other things, and they paid me for my time, but they said, well, we could do all this stuff because all the stuff's readily available. Of course it is. Does anybody do it, or do they pull them all together and say, is this organized?
Right.
And that's the problem. There's so many things out there that are readily available, but most of us don't have the time, energy, or effort to be able to pull it together.
Of course not. We don't have time to be full
and and I've written articles about what are the 13 most important things families need to know. That's on Autism Speaks.
Well, we need to have you back, and
we could start going through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we'll have you back to talk about that. Kelby, are you telling me I have 1 minute left for the whole show?
Are we?
We're going to call Shannon. No. Okay. But we have a limited amount of time here with you. Okay. Did this take a toll on your marriage?
Yes.
Okay.
The marriage.
And I want to get too personal here.
No, my mother's children. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened in that marriage, including her mom marrying my dad.
Okay.
Well, they said a couple of years after we were married.
Show.
That was my dad's wife number 3.
He went
through fight.
That's a whole other thing.
Place deal.
Okay.
But yes, there was a self-blame, then there was a blame game, then there was just the anxiety. And then that's where our parenting skills came out to be completely opposite.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you 2 questions here before we wrap it up. What advice would you give to couples that have a child who's diagnosed, maybe a little younger, they're going through some rough patches? How would you encourage them to get through this journey together?
Well, the first thing I always tell them is typically it gets better. As they get older and get more, go through the maturity and so forth, it gets better unless they're a serious self-injurious, violent, then you may have a problem because now you have a child that can be 100 or 120 pound girl or a 200 pound boy or 300. I've seen some big guys. Yeah. And then you've got a whole nother set of circumstances.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is they don't really know what they're doing. They don't know how to control it. They don't know how to deal with it. But had they been born a regular child, they might have been a linebacker in the NFL.
Right.
So,
of course.
It gets better.
Okay.
Number one.
So try to stick it out with each other.
No. The beauty, and I've seen some great relationships, and realistically, the special needs child, in most ways, especially if you are a spiritually strong family, should bring the family closer together.
That's what happened with our family before my husband passed away. He learned a lot, and he, said, I'm not good at this, but you take the lead, and I will follow in your footsteps. And we became stronger people of faith, and we became more committed to one another. I won't say it was easy, but it definitely brought our marriage together, and I do think that there is something to be said for that, and I know there's stats on that too. Okay, last thing, but we are going to have you back, I promise, to talk to give your 10 most important things you would say to parents to do.
Yeah.
We're going to have you back in the future, but if you could say anything to the dads that are listening, what would you say?
Learn to love your kid, learn to accept him. They are going to be there for you, and they will love you like you've never been loved before. That was probably the hardest thing. It took me about 10 years in my acceptance. And once I started accepting my son, there's no stopping it.
Very famous man once said to me, who has a son with autism that is not publicly known, when his son got a job, I said, "You must be so proud of him." And he looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, "I am." And he said, "But you know what? I've never told him that. Don't do that with Wyatt."
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for those words, my friend.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Doug Baker, thank you. You're such a pioneer and leader in this
Maybe
field.
one of these days I can get Scotty out here and,
we'd love that.
You'll see that beautiful little smiling.
We'd love that. What a handsome boy. And I know you're
personality.
proud of him. All right. We're going to take a really quick break and we're going to come back with Shannon Penrod.
Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible.
We are back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and I have Shannon on the phone with me. Hi, Shannon.
Hey, Nancy. I just want to say so much thanks to you. You have been such a rock. You always are in my life. But, man, I said this to you yesterday. You You always amaze me by showing me more and more how much you are who you are, and who you are is awesome. And you have so been there for me this week and have filled in, and just amazing to think that you're doing all of that in what is probably one of the toughest hours of your life. I just so appreciate you. You're such a good friend and such a good person.
I so appreciate you, and as I told you, if I can do 1/10 of what you've done for me over the last year, it's my pleasure. And it also, when I spend time with our families and with Dr. Doreen and with some of the people in our community, it is a wonderful, wonderful balm for my grief. And I know that my spiritual director, Sister Greta, says that the best way to heal yourself is to be of service to others. So hopefully I have been of some service. Okay.
You always are.
Well, thank you, darling.
Viewers are great people.
All right.
You've done this is a great show. I've been riveted to it.
Good.
So thank you.
Now let's talk about your pneumonia for a second. Are you going to get over this?
Yes, I have every intention. I am getting better. I'm so much better than I was, and I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon. The hope was that she was going to let me come back to work tomorrow. I'm not really seeing that happening.
I don't see that happening, and I don't see that that's a necessity, right?
Well,
did you hear Doreen talk at the top of the hour? Yeah.
I did. And if I could have spoken up, I would have said, you know, I so appreciate hearing that coming from the two of you, because I know that you also, as does Dr. Doreen, we all struggle with, you know, when is enough and taking care of ourselves. But I appreciated hearing it. I've had so many people write to me and say, slow down and take care of yourself. I'm getting it. I'm learning as I go.
Okay, so I wanted to get into this Is Asperger's Funny movie, but I think we're going to have to shelve that to next week, because you are a fan of. Yeah, you're a fan of that filmmaker.
It's showing up on Netflix any day now.
Okay, and you're a fan of Mark Duplass, right?
I am. I love togetherness, and I think that he and his brother do some amazing, cutting-edge, fabulous stuff.
Okay, do you agree we got to get him on the show?
Well, I mean, if we can, he's one of the hottest tickets in Hollywood.
Well, so what? So are we.
Sure.
So are we.
But yes, and I think he really stepped up and produced this film when somebody who he worked was on the crew said, "Hey, I'm doing this. Will you look at it?" And he looked at it and said, "This is just too good. I got to help out here." So big kudos, big thumbs up to him.
Definitely.
I can't wait to see the film.
Now, I do want to just touch on really briefly a very touching story that we're going to end the show with. Los Altos High to host Sweethearts Prom in memory of Hacienda Heights couple. Shan, you covered this couple. Los Altos High School here in California is hosting a Sweethearts Prom next month for students with disabilities in memory of the Hacienda Heights couple killed last year in a car accident. High school sweethearts Sabrina Castillo and George Stewart died the night of October 18th after their pickup was struck by an airborne vehicle. Since then, their parents have talked about how to ensure the 18-year-old couple's memory lives on. Castillo's mom said she thought hosting a dance for disabled students would be a great way to honor the teens who loved going to school dances at Los Altos. Volunteered at Parents Place, a center in West Covina that supports families with special needs children. Because her daughter would often do her friends' makeup and hair and share her dresses with others, she wanted to do the same for other students. The dance scheduled for March 18th is free. It's obviously just happened. Complimentary hair and makeup were done. And what a beautiful story, right, Shannon? What a tragic yet beautiful story.
I mean, two huge lights on this planet that went out, but their mothers, I'm going to cry. I can't imagine the loss that they're feeling of these two wonderful human beings, but especially Sabrina. Sabrina was always so involved with autism, and she and her boyfriend did everything together, and so these two moms have honored their memory in such a beautiful way, and I really feel like the autism community needs to embrace these two moms for their loss and for being so positive in their loss. They really have done something amazing.
Such great examples. And just on another note, Shannon and I want to send our love and our blessings to everyone in Belgium today. And this just horrific, horrific terrorism that is going on. All we can do is say, we're deeply, deeply sorry, and we send our love and prayers. So, Shannon, please rest, and we may see you next week. You won't be back tomorrow, but we may see you next week. I hope.
But I think Kelby and I are going to work out so that there will be a show tomorrow, because you taped some amazing interviews yesterday, and I taped an interview already last week. So I think we're going to work it out. There will be a show tomorrow, but I just will not be there live.
Okay. Well, do you think that Autism Works Now program might run?
Yes, I think Kelby and I have got it worked out so that can still happen.
Okay,
Share that.
That is something that I don't want our viewers to miss, because I spent an hour with Joanne Laura and Susan Osborne and 4 of the adults that are doing the program. It is so inspirational, so don't miss it. All right, Shannon, get back to bed. I'm going to say, you want to give your regular sign off?
I want to say thanks to everybody. Thank you to you. We'll see you when we next see you. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.